I'm sure we all have taken aspirin whether you had a headache or a back pain or to reduce fever. Today I want to describe to you the problems with overdose on aspirin. The first thing that I would like you to know how serious that it is an aspirin overdose. An aspirin is present in hundreds of prescription and non-prescription drugs. A large overdose can be dangerous. The toxicity of an aspirin also depends on the amount of aspirin previously taken in past 24 hours. A small overdose that is taken daily can accumulate in the body, causing toxicity. And aspirin is more dangerous if you have kidney disease. Now that you have an idea of how dangerous how dangerous this aspirin can be, let's just take a look at the symptoms of an overdose. The symptoms are you could get double vision, uncontrolled shaking, seizure, burning throat, body pain, or decreasing the urination, and cause fever. Minor overdose of aspirin do not cause serious symptoms, and like I said, it could upset the stomach and heartburn, and nausea may occur. I have shown you the symptoms of an aspirin overdose. Now that we acknowledge what you should do in the event of an aspirin overdose. Anyone that takes an overdose in an attempt to cause self-harm, like in this picture, she overdosed. Do not take an implant or try to induce vomiting. You should call local emergency number 911 or also call the National Poison Control Center. Today I talked how serious an overdose aspirin, what are the symptoms, and what should you do in the event of an aspirin overdose. I hope now that you think twice about taking more than one aspirin.
So Ryan, what did you think?
You started off, you had a decent attention grabber to set up your speech and let us know what your topic is. I thought you had good content and your visuals were okay. I'm not sure what your time was, but your speech was pretty short. And you kind of just read off your paper a lot. You didn't really you stayed in the same spot, you didn't really move around, initiate with the audience very much. And I think your tone could have been a little louder. It was just kind of monotone the whole time. But overall, I thought you had good structure, good setup for your speech. So, it was good.
All right. Jess, I thought that the opening was a good idea, that you try and get us involved about the subject, by talking about how everybody takes aspirin for some reason or other. But then moving to the topic of overdosing on aspirin, I think was a little bit awkward and rushed. I think you need some illustration or some story here to transition to this particular point. Either an illustration of somebody accidentally overdosing on this, or maybe, like you talked about, somebody definitely trying to hurt themselves by taking too much aspirin, or some kid who stupidly heard somewhere, if you take aspirin with Coke, you're going to get high, and they're trying to do that kind of thing. I mean, the world is full of people that do stupid things, and there should be plenty of stories then that will make it a little bit more interesting. It's structurally, I thought that the preview, there might have been a preview there, but it rushed by, the opening rushed by so quickly, and all of the material you're going through it very quickly. But there are a couple of things that are very clear. First of all, it's clear that you've got a structure. So it is outlined and organized, and I did think you had an excellent set of transitions between the points. I mean, we knew when you were done with one point, you were going to the next. Sometimes it's a little bit obvious, but it's one of those things that's clear, and we want it to be clear. Excuse me. It would be great if it was a little bit smoother and less like right in your face sort of thing, but it was fine. The content on the individual points, though, is really, really thin. You need some more details on this. I'm not sure if I know how many people are poisoned by aspirin every year, or even how many people have some kind of allergic reaction. You put up the one chart that talked about what all the symptoms were of an aspirin overdose, but that went by so quickly, and you showed it for such a brief amount of time that I barely remember any of it, and I think you need to maybe, like I said, take a couple of those symptoms that you're talking about, describe them in detail, give us an illustration, tell us a story about somebody who went through that and realized that they needed help, or that they were having a problem, or maybe even worse, somebody who didn't get help and ignored the symptoms, and as a consequence something bad happened to them. They had a long-term health problem, or maybe even they died. The potential on that, I think, could be explained. It may be that you have focused in so much on the idea of overdosing on aspirin that you're cutting out so many other possibilities. I think the subject of aspirin by itself might be a good way to talk about something and give yourself more things to discuss. You may have narrowed the focus a little bit too much. The speech is only 3 minutes, so you can tell that it's kind of sketchy, that it needs to be filled in a little bit. I thought you did a good job making transitions with the visuals. It looked like you were having a little bit of trouble getting them to load. I'm not sure if that's just your unfamiliarity with the process, or whether or not the PowerPoint was, I'd say, sticking, but it doesn't really work that way. Sticking, I don't know, not functioning the way it's supposed to. Normally all you need to do is push that left click button and it just advances the screen, but you seem to have to pull up the menu and go to the next button, and it felt a little bit awkward. You handled it really well. I didn't think it was that problematic, but it's one of those things a little practice would fix. Of course, it's tough because you're working with the mouse that you haven't encountered before. Every time I work with an animal that I haven't encountered before, they need more training. You know why that joke was like a piece of paper? Because it was terrible. Oh, God. Sorry.